Please take your seats. So, good morning to rainy Brussels in the middle of new COVID measures. I'm glad that we have live attendance. It's a hybrid event, but now is the time when even hybrid events become problematic. Welcome to all of those watching us online. My name is Georgi Gotev. I have many hats, but right now I appear here as the publisher of Euractiv Bulgaria. Euractiv Bulgaria is organizing this conference. And I should say that as a journalist, I think this is a very timely event. It's been many years since I have been covering Nord Stream 2, but the issue has never been so dramatic in many respects. The geopolitical respect, the role of the institutions, the business aspects, of course, against the background of the energy price hike, etc. But we will come back to this. The title of this conference is No Certification Without Compliance, ? And I think that the most important part of this title is the question mark. Let's try to figure out what the question marks stands for. We have a great panel today. We have Mr. Yuriy Vitrenko, who is the CEO of Naftogaz Ukraine. Naftogaz, the largest gas and oil company of Ukraine, owned and controlled by the Ukraine government. By the way, the Prime Minister of Ukraine is in Brussels today. Mr. Vitrenko has an amazing CV. I think that if we start from the beginning, I think he was a sort of wunderkind, weren't you? Because I think at the age of 14, you made your first economic transactions. 15, okay. But it's a very rich international career, and you have been recently acting minister for energy before being appointed as director of the board of Naftogaz. We have MEP Viola von Kramon-Taubadel, who is from Germany, from the Green Party, a very key party when we discuss Nord Stream 2 these days. And she has also a very interesting CV, which is very much also linked to Ukraine. I think that in the mid-90s, you were already working together with the Ukrainian government. So it's a long experience. And she is at the same time deputy chair of the delegation of the European Parliament Association Committee with Ukraine. She sits in she's a member of the Foreign Affairs Committee, and also she sits in the ITRE committee, which deals with energy issues. So the right person at the right place. And last but not least, we have online our third speaker, Professor Dr. Friedberg Pflüger, who also has a great CV. I mean, he was a politician in the Bundestag from CDU. He was deputy minister for defense. He wrote a book which I noticed was about the threat of Islam, published long before we discussed the threat of Islam as an issue at all. He teaches now energy and climate security at the European Cluster for Climate, Energy and Resource Security, and the Center for Advanced Security, named CASIS, at the University of Bonn. And he's a managing partner of Bingman Pflüger International. And let me say also that Professor Plüger can stay with us only until 12 o'clock. So I will make sure that the questions directed to him will be asked before it will be time for him to leave us. Now, in terms of housekeeping, there will be a mobile microphone for the questions. So we will have initial statements by the three panelists between 10 and 15 minutes. After that, possibly a discussion between the panelists, and then I will open the door to questions. Yeah, I guess that's it. Without further ado, I would like to give the floor now to Mr. Vitrenko. You have the floor, sir. And please use the microphone.
I'm really glad to be here in Brussels today. And since we're in Brussels, probably it's appropriate to start with a quote of Joseph Burrell, who said recently that it was about the refugee conflict, but I will explain why it is relevant in our case, that everything today is weaponized. Because even before this weaponization of the refugees, we had the weaponization of gas supplies to Ukraine and gas supplies to the European Union from the Russian territory. So Ukraine has a first-hand experience in countering such weaponization of gas. And now that Europe feels the effect of such weaponization in their pocketbooks, probably it's more than appropriate to discuss how to counter such weaponization. First of all, but let's all agree that it's indeed happening and that that's a real weaponization. Just a couple of examples what I mean. So despite a surge in demand, Russia decreased supplies to the European market, unlike, for example, Norwegians who increased their supplies. You could hear some phony counter arguments that look, Russia is fulfilling their contractual obligations, but it's only about so-called long-term contracts. But they decreased sales and supplies on the so-called spot market 3 times. So again, there is a surge in demand, and they decrease supplies in the spot market 3 times. Then they regularly do, and currently there are very vivid examples of it, so-called price differentiation. When they sell gas into different countries or in different markets and different prices, and the logic is not a commercial logic. So example, they want to help some Serbian politicians ahead of some elections. They sell gas and some non-market discounts or non-market terms. They want to punish Moldova for their geopolitical choice, their European choice, to the same extent they punished Ukraine. Again, they immediately demand higher prices, repayment of debts resulting from unconscionable provisions in the contract in the past, and stuff like that. And also, for example, recently we had an example when, because of Russian warships, because of Russian illegal annexation of Crimea, and their continuing aggression in our waters in the Black Sea, we cannot finish a so-called seismic study on our outer shelf and in deep waters in the Black Sea that are Ukrainian waters by European firms, so that we can produce more of our own gas and, for example, export it to the European Union without even saying that we would cover our internal needs. So if that is not weaponization, then what it is? Now let's go back to the main topic of today's event about the certification of Nord Stream 2. And the logical link between this weaponization and this certification is very clear. So here in this room, and here in Brussels and here in Europe, what we can do to counter this weaponization is to insist on the full application of the rule of law. So that's our answer to the war waged by Russia, to the gas war and weaponization of gas supplies. And if we are more specific about this particular legal process, certification of Nord Stream 2, our position is very clear. Since currently it's not compliant with the European rules, it should not be certified. So if and when maybe again they comply with European rules, then it will be a different story. But now it's obvious that they do not comply with the European rules, and that's why they should not be certified. At the heart of the matter at the moment, because of the latest tricks played by Gazprom, is the full application of the third energy package, the European rules, to the entire Nord Stream 2 pipeline, from Ust-Lug in Russia to the German territory, as opposite to the application only to the last mile, only to the small part of the pipeline that goes already on the German territory. Here I would quote a prominent, I would say, by the way, he's German, but he used to work as a Deputy Director General here in Brussels, responsible for the gas sector, Klaus-Dieter Borchert. In 2000, recently, basically, in 2019, then in 2020, he told Platz the following. He said that he was very skeptical about the suggested split regulation of Nord Stream 2 pipeline. And he was asked if, or he commented basically, if it should apply only to the small part in German territorial waters. And he said, look, we have virtual entry point. How would they guarantee third-party access if they do not start at the beginning? Because you cannot tie in something underwater. So it's still the same pipeline, he said. This implies that DG Energy, the very European institution that is supposed to take care of it, at the time put a big question mark on the suggested split regulation of Nord Stream 2 pipeline. According to the counter memorial, by the way, of the European Union, in the investment treaty arbitration under the Energy Charter Treaty, the European Union argued that that rule, similar to the rules of the third energy package, could have imposed already by virtue of the European competition law. I will explain what it means. So basically, again, the European rules are designed to ensure a level playing field, to ensure a fair competition in the market. And of course, if there is a company like Gazprom that controls production of gas, trading of gas, supply of gas, and transmission of gas, they prevent fair competition in the market. They do not allow a non-discriminatory use of their pipelines, for example, like in case of Nord Stream 1. So, and it's clearly against, again, the European rules that say that there should be fair competition, there should be non-discriminatory access to transmission infrastructure like pipelines. And even if before it was, again, as somebody claimed, it was unclear if such rules should apply to Nord Stream 1, in 2019, I believe, the European Parliament made an explicit decision that these rules should apply to third country pipelines like Nord Stream 2. So that's why, if again somebody could say we don't understand how competition law should work in respect of Nord Stream 1, with the explicit extension of third-party package, the energy law, the European energy law to Nord Stream 2, it's clear that Nord Stream 2, the whole pipeline from Ust-Lug, from the entry point on the Russian territory to the exit point on the German territory, should be subject to these European rules, including, first and foremost, non-discriminatory third-party access to this whole pipeline. What it means, this non-discriminatory third-party access? It means that other producers of gas in Russia should be able to export gas from Russia through such a pipeline. It means that exporters from Central Asia, for example, countries like Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, who want to export and sell their gas in the European market, should be able to transit gas through Russia and then decide on a transit route from Russia to the European Union. It also means that European off-takers should have a choice to buy on the Russian border. So Gazprom should not dictate where they should get their gas. But then imagine if, currently it's not the case, it's by far not the case, but imagine if Nord Stream 2 gets such non-discriminatory third-party access. But other pipelines that connects Russia and the European Union do not get such an access. It will put Germany in a privileged position vis-a-vis other countries, like, for example, Slovakia, Poland, Czechia, Austria, Italy, where these other pipelines that connect Russia and the European Union end. One can say, okay, but again, what is good for Germany? Again, that's what the German government should care about. But it's not basically compliant with European rules, because if we look at the European rules, there is a very fundamental principle of solidarity that is enshrined in the European rules. It's one of the founding principles of the TFTU, treaty founding the European Union. Also, since there is an association agreement between Europe and Ukraine, it's also a part of the European rules. So the German regulator cannot make a decision that would have a detrimental effect on competition in other European markets, in other European countries, like again, Slovakia, for example. So, and it was recently confirmed in the decision of the European Court of Justice in Opal case, when the court says, look, German regulator, you have, it's an obligation basically, you have to take into account the effect on competition in other European markets. That's a must. And again, it means that such a third-party access, non-discriminatory third-party access, should be provided not just to Nord Stream 2 pipeline, but to all the pipelines that connect Russia and the European Union, including the one that goes through Ukraine. Only then there will be a level playing field, fair competition. Only then it will be compliant with the spirit and the letter of the European law. And that's what we are demanding, basically. We're saying, look, since now it's not the case, and now Nord Stream 2 is not compliant with these rules, first, let's make them comply with these rules and then see. Only then, again, such a certification can be considered. In terms of some procedural points, just to remind the audience about the process. So currently, there is a suspended certification process carried out by BNetzA. It's a German regulator. This suspension was given again for Gazprom to create a German subsidiary. And as Gazprom states, basically, this German subsidiary will operate only the small part of Nord Stream 2 that goes on the German territory. That's exactly the trick I was talking about. And then the German regulator should get back to the certification process once they establish this German entity. We're clearly against such an approach. We say that, again, certifying just the last mile makes no sense. It's a mockery of the European rules. And we hope that it won't happen, basically. And then if we look at the procedure, after the German regulator makes their preliminary decision, they should then consult the European Commission. And the European Commission should have a say in terms of such compliance. And we would expect that the European Commission will have a very firm position to apply the European rules to the entire pipeline to ensure, again, a non-discriminatory third-party access to the entire pipeline, but not just to this pipeline, but to all the pipelines that connect, again, Russia and the European Union. And we were, on our request, we were allowed to participate in the certification process. It does not mean that we get somehow like a veto power or something like that. It's just a right to be heard. But we're supposed to be giving access to the file, and we're supposed to be given the chance to provide our arguments. So we'll make sure that we provide all the necessary arguments to the German regulator as well as to the European Commission. Again, we are hopeful that this time the German regulator will follow the spirit and the letter of the European law. We believe that with the, we hope basically that with the new coalition in Germany, with the Green Party in this coalition in particular, or especially, there is a chance that even the German government will reconsider their conclusion that Nord Stream 2 poses no threat to the security of supply in Germany, because in our view, it's obviously wrong. It is a very clear threat to the security of supply in Germany. But we also believe that with, again, the new coalition in Germany, with a very firm position of the European Commission, with a very clear understanding that Nord Stream 2 and Russia energy policies are contrary to the climate change objectives declared by the new coalition in Germany, by the European Union. Again, this project will be stopped. And then again, I'm happy to participate in the discussion.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Vitrenko. You spoke of the chance Ukraine has to provide arguments under the certification procedure. And I think we are doing the same thing right now publicly, which I think is the role of the media, very much the role of Euractiv, helping the sides to communicate and better understand each other. Let me say that we invited also the European Commission to be part of the panel, but they said basically that this is not the time for them to communicate. And we also invited the Nord Stream chief representative to the EU institutions, who basically said the same argument: this is not the right time. I would like now to give the floor to Professor Pflüger. I was looking at his body language, and I think that he will disagree with some or many of your arguments, Mr. Vitrenko. But in any case, I would like to give him the floor right now. Professor, you have the floor.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. It's good to see you again. Also, Yuri, with whom I have discussed in former times already the same issue. Let me just make clear where I stand. I'm a professor, a visiting professor at the University of Bonn, and I teach climate security there. We're just running a course on climate diplomacy, and apart from that, I have my own consulting company. That's my main job. And I have one mandate among many with Nord Stream 2. So you could say I'm a bit biased, but I want to make that transparent from the very beginning, as I've always done. And make sure also that you know that we have also had mandates for a long time with Trans-Adriatic Pipeline. We advised the Albanian government on TAP. On LNG terminals, on other gas and renewable projects. So we are diversified. And the diversification is something which is extremely important. And here I agree with everything that has been said. It is never good if you have a monopoly. Competition is important. Other sources are important. Therefore, I believe the Trans-Adriatic Pipeline is a major achievement, as is the possibility to get gas via LNG to Europe. We have made a lot of progress in the last 10 years under the European Commission to get to more than 30 LNG terminals, more interconnectors. We have a mature infrastructure also when it comes to storage facilities, reverse flow. So the big difference to the situation 10 years ago when we had well, more than 10 years ago, when we had the Ukrainian-Russian gas crisis is that we have learned our lesson. It's never good to be dependent on one source. And that is definitely also true concerning Gazprom and Russia. So here, I think we agree, at least in general. Second point that I would like to make is we have a new German government, or we will soon have it. That is not my party, as you have rightly pointed out, but I wish it all well. I believe they deserve a chance. And I'm a strong believer in the Paris Accord, in Fit for 55, the Green Deal, and I believe that this is the future. So the future is not, Naftogaz, oil and gas. The future is renewables, efficiency, decarbonization of our industries. So that is the aim, and this I share with the new government. I've written my first book on this issue in 1990, How to Save the Planet. And I'm an old believer in the school of Klaus Töpfer that we have to save our planet, and that is a very important task. But I also share the belief of the new German government that gas is necessary for a transition period, that we need, especially if we want to have if we want to abolish coal earlier, that we need new gas power plants, and that gas will, at least in the next 20 to 25 years, play an important role in the German energy mix and also in the European energy mix. So therefore, I believe that to get new possibilities, to get gas to Europe, modern possibilities, climate-friendly possibilities is a good idea. Nord Stream 2 is, as far as I understand, not hydrogen ready, but it is possible to change the pipeline to hydrogen, at least to 70, 80%. That's what the experts, the technical experts told me. So I would say this is one piece of additional infrastructure, and I welcome every new source of bringing gas to Europe, as this means more liquidity in the market. And we see with today's gas prices how important it is to have different possibilities of gas. By the way, just in parentheses, where is the American LNG? Everybody said, well, LNG, the freedom molecules, we don't see them right now. They have all gone to China and to India. We have worldwide a situation where gas prices are exploding, and that shows how important it is to have reliable partners. And that is a big difference to Yuriy's perception. And of course, it is because of the geopolitical situation and the experiences in the Cold War. We have always seen in West Germany, at least, that Russia, even in the worst times of the Cold War, was a secure supplier of gas. Gas was never used as a weapon, at least not against vis-a-vis Germany. And vis-a-vis the other Western European countries, it was reliable. That is the big difference in our perceptions. Why is it so? Russia is more dependent on selling gas to Europe than vice versa. We are not any more dependent. We have other possibilities that will cost more, but we have other possibilities. They cannot blackmail us anymore. They could do so perhaps 10 or 15 years ago. They cannot do it today. So we have diversified, and I think we can be very happy with the performance of the European Commission and the European Parliament in the last 10 years in bringing about this diversification. My next point is, Rule of law, absolutely. European rule of law, absolutely. And I just was present at a Nord Stream reception in Brussels a few weeks ago, where we had a lot of stakeholders in Brussels. And there, the chairman of Nord Stream very clearly said, we want to obey to European rules, and we want to stick to everything that is said. I cannot speak for Nord Stream. I have no mandate for us to speak for them. I have no mandate to lobby for them. I just do analysis with my team for them from time to time. But I want to note this. I have not heard a single representative of Nord Stream saying we want to do something against European law. Also not the old and not the new German government want to do that. We have clear regulations. So please, Yuri, do not remind us on the rule of law. We know exactly what law is necessary about. What is necessary here. But what makes it difficult to apply this rule of law is American sanctions, extraterritorial sanctions. And I deplore it very much that your president and representatives of Ukraine are encouraging the US Congress to take actions against European companies. That is something where the European Union, the Parliament, the Commission should live that solidarity that you just proclaimed. And I'm very happy that the new, one of the new leaders of the energy and foreign policy of the Green Party, Mr. Nouripur, said, I'm completely against Nord Stream. I've always been against Nord Stream, but I'm at the same time absolutely against sanctions. We have in an alliance to discuss those issues and not threaten ourselves. And in that regard, Mrs. Merkel and Mr. Biden struck a deal a few weeks ago. And well, I'm just asking, stick to that deal. Do not come with sanctions. And that deal is great for Ukraine. That has been noted by the European government. How much money the German government gave, 175 million initial investment in Ukraine's energy transition, introduce a 70 million Ukraine resilience package to support Ukraine's energy security, 3 Cs initiative, implement the letter and spirit of the EU third energy package. The American government clearly underlines what Germany has done. And we have spent a lot of money, also public money for the pipeline between Denmark, Norway, and Poland, the Baltic pipeline. We have spent a lot of money on interconnectors to meet the fears of the Eastern European countries, the Central and Eastern European countries. And then I'm fed up, and I must say that very clearly, that we pay this money, our taxpayers pay this money, that we do everything for Ukraine, as we have done in the past, have enlarged NATO together with you, stuck to our, not to all, I understand the 2% goal, here we can do better, but we have done so much. And what we hear from your side is only complaints, and not only complaints, attacks. And I really want to tell you this is not the right way to deal in Europe. If we want to come closer together, I think it needs another tone, and it needs another understanding of what the German government has done. And the coalition agreement says we have so many possibilities with Ukraine on hydrogen, on decarbonization, on energy efficiency in buildings, on green energy, on biomass, and so many possibilities. Why do you always concentrate on gas? And Russia, I think it is important to stand up against Russia, against everyone who threatens our freedom. But it's not only good enough to stand up for this and say we're willing to fight. It's also important, that's the lesson we have learned in the Cold War, to have a hand for cooperation, for dialogue, for détente. That was the Armel report of 1967 of NATO. Be strong, let us stick together, but always give a chance for dialogue and coming together. And this way of putting hurdle after hurdle of a pipeline which is physically there doesn't make things better. It puts new oil into the fire. And I think this is exactly the wrong way to deal with an important issue, but we have much more important issues. Bring renewable energy also to Russia, by the way. Make peace, let us have dialogue, and not only stick day after day on this issue of the pipeline. It's there now, and it is time for you, Yuri, to understand that it is there, that it will transport gas sooner or later, and that it's perhaps a good idea to just now look for compromises and possibilities for cooperation.
It's a pity that you will have to leave us, because I don't think we are going to agree within the time frame that you have. But I'm going now, without further ado, to give the floor to the next speaker on my list, Viola von Kramon-Taubadel. I'm sure she will like to reply to many of your statements, like you are welcoming a new source of gas to Europe, but this is Russian gas. For example, US sanctions make it difficult to respect the rule of law. Even in the Cold War, Russia was a secure supplier. They cannot blackmail us. This deserves a comment. You have the floor, Mrs. von Taubadel.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Georgi, and thanks a lot to Euroactive for organizing this very timely debate here, and also with the valuable, extremely competent speakers. It's a big pleasure to be here. Let me maybe start with some, let's say, bigger picture, and I'm a little bit puzzled that you, Mr. Pflüger, have not mentioned that. I mean, we are not in a vacuum. What we see at the eastern border of Ukraine is not fun. And I know that all my Ukrainian friends are terrified on what's going on. And that has clearly to do with the constant threat of Russia against each and every independent state in their neighborhood. Yuriy Vitrenko has rightly mentioned the case of Moldova. We see now this arming, the maneuver, the military operation at the border, at the eastern border of Ukraine, that goes on in a very, let's say, alarming way, also for people who are normally not alarmed. And so let me be very clear. I mean, it sounded very naive to me when you said we learned our lesson. I would say the opposite is true. I mean, we did not diversify, but we rely even more on one source, even more on Russian purely gas from Gazprom. And I'm absolutely shocked how the former government has handled that case. Russia occupies and annexed Crimea. Russia intervened in the Donbas area, and as a what? They get the opportunity for an exclusive access to the German and to the European gas market. How can you do this? How can you explain this to anybody in the European Union? And Yuriy Vitrenko has rightly said that nobody in the European Union, apart from some Austrian dealers and some Dutch ones, and maybe a couple of British, are part of this consortium. And when you listen to the colleagues in the European Parliament, they are all very much concerned. And there is a huge majority from the south to the east to the north who is against that. So this is clearly a project against the energy interest of the European Union. And that is made clear many times in different resolutions, but it's not enough. And this is our problem right now. So we are at the point where you speak about we have to come up with a climate-friendly solution. Yes, but we have a pipeline through Ukraine, which transmit so-called gas. So why do we need an additional one, which would be a geopolitical threat to Ukraine? And it's an obvious one. In that moment, when the certification is being done for Nord Stream 2, I mean, Putin will go ahead with anything he wants. A military intervention in a larger extent is not impossible. And for each and everyone who's watching the situation, be it in the Western Balkan, be it in Georgia, be it in Moldova, be it in Ukraine, be it in Belarus, it is so obvious. And that we as Germans close our eyes and say just, well, it's a secure supplier, while we see the opposite is true. Russia is, as Yuri has said, has not supplied and delivered more, but on the opposite, has decreased the amount of gas. I mean, what else in terms of proofs and indications we need more? And I mean, I have been heard or told by many people how much Gazprom has lobbied here in Brussels to get this exemption from the EU gas directive. I mean, surely they did want everything but rule of law. They never want to comply to this gas directive. They never wanted to have a fair and a transparent certification procedure. They were always bullying the Commission here. They were always bullying the German government in person of Gerhard Schröder. They were very successful to do so. You have probably been involved even in this positive opinion by the former Minister for Economic Affairs in Germany, or Minister for Economy. And I do hope that we can even have a closer look when the certification process is being assessed. Then the opinion of the Commission will come to the Bundesnetzagentur, to the German regulator, and then again the Ministry for Economy will have a different saying. And I do hope this looks different from what we had from the old government. I mean, sorry to say, but I mean, we can accuse Ukraine for many other things, and I'm the best critics in many other issues. But when it comes to their, let's say, their responsibility to secure their country, their existence, I think we have to stand next to Ukraine and make sure they're not left alone. And I'm extremely ashamed by the last letter we have found as a non-paper recently online. I have no idea who is the author of this. Was it the German MFA? I don't hope so. Was it a group of members of parliament? I don't hope so. But who was behind that? Telling Congress not to put another sanction on this. Yes, of course, sanctions is not a good solution. I'm absolutely in line with this. This should be the ultima ratio, and putting sanction on a little mayor in Rügen is absolutely ridiculous, absolutely clear. But if we cannot put a brake in any different way on this project, and if we would really like to make sure we have not a secure provision for Ukraine, yes, I was in favor of the sanctions. I know that sounds silly, but for me, there was the last opportunity, the last possibility, how we can make sure that Ukraine is not left to another Russian aggression and to obviously the arbitrary will of Gazprom.
But could I ask one question in between?
Yes, please.
If I may. If that is true, that you say you don't like sanctions, but it's the ultima ratio, then you do not trust our institutions. I trust our institutions. I trust the European and the German institutions that the rule of law will be supported. We have different opinions about it. They are interpretations, but I'm completely confident that our government, our courts will apply European law, and you obviously not, because you say, well, in a certain moment, European sanctions might be necessary.
Let me ask you, there is this joint paper it was written, I think, by the German MFA, by representatives of the Ministry for Economy, the Chancellor, and by the State Department and others in Washington. And it clearly said there is the opportunity for sanctions. But actually, the measures which Gazprom and the Kremlin have done already, from my understanding and my humble legal understanding, this would be already now the case to put sanctions on Russia. And I don't think they will do so. And this is my definitely my increasing mistrust and my increasing concern that there's a nice paper circling around, and I could fully understand the frustration of Mr. Kuleba and Mr. Zelensky and others who have said this is nothing worth than just a peace with Russia in the moment where the US would like to have the German support for a tougher sanction, for a tougher stand on China. That was the only reason why Biden has agreed to withdraw the sanctions. And I think that was the wrong move to not to clearly see the situation in the east of the borders of Ukraine and others. So for my understanding, yes, if sanctions are the last opportunity to secure the situation as it is, to make sure to keep the Gazprom involvement out, I would be in favor. Even this sounds too alarming at that moment. And it's not about business. I'm absolutely sure it was from the very beginning clear, and Gazprom has never made a big fuss out of this. It was never a commercial project. It was never to be beneficial for any side in Russia. It was clearly for the geopolitical threat to pass around and to exempt Ukraine. I could go into more details, but maybe
yes,
we start with a...
Yes, please don't bypass me as a moderator. I will give the floor to anyone. And Professor Plüger, I'm aware that you have 11 minutes for your time. I will give you the floor definitely. I would like now to give the chance to Mr. Vitrenko to react, and I would like to ask him in the meantime. I mean, there were news that Rosneft is basically certified to be able to export gas. Does it mean that probably there will be a solution in that respect, that the Gazprom monopoly will be somehow broken, or some sort of arrangement would be found? But you have the floor, Mr. Vitrenko, to also react to what has been said.
I will try to be very brief, but I will start with the most heated part of our discussion about the weaponization, basically, of gas. In this joint statement of Biden administration and Merkel administration, they clearly said that should there be weaponization of gas, should Russia use gas as a weapon, there should be a reaction, meaning basically including sanctions. It's obvious that Russia has been using gas as a weapon. Putin is into everybody's face, basically, about that. He's saying, look, again, if you don't certify, or if you don't allow Nord Stream 2 to become operating, if you don't go back, again, to long-term contracts, and it's contrary, by the way, to this climate change objective. So Mr. Plüger can say about, again, his support for the climate agenda, but coming back to long-term contracts with Russia is probably against, basically, this agenda, is probably against the logic of the market development. But basically, Putin is blackmailing, again, Russia and the European Union, and he's very, again, explicit about that. So from that perspective, again, one should expect a reaction from the German government and from the US government. Also, again, the US is to a large extent a security leader of the free world. So if you, for example, rely to a large extent on the US for the military protection, again, to take care of the global security, then you should probably allow the US to make some decisions, whether you like them or not, basically, how to secure the security. Sorry for repeating these words. So basically, if they say that, look, Nord Stream 2 poses a security threat to the free world, then maybe, again, somebody should listen to such kind of arguments and do something about that. And by the way, speaking of the rule of law, there was a recent, not a decision, but like a statement of the European Commission, I guess, when they looked into the situation of their sanctions over EU companies, and they concluded that there was nothing illegal about that. So it's perfectly legal for the US to have sanctions over the European companies. But then let's not fool ourselves. Whom do you call a European company? A 100% subsidiary of Gazprom? Again, it's a Russian company just in the Swiss package. You see, if you just, I don't know, take a Russian bear and put some kind of Swiss bell on it, it does not become a Swiss cow, you see? So you have to be very realistic about everything that is going on over there. And then some brief comments with all due respect to Germany. Again, unfortunately, well, let's first back to Gazprom. So you're saying that they comply with the rule of law and they are hosting some events where they say how they are obedient, or basically how they favor the rule of law. But at the same time, they are the ones who went to court against the application of the EU rules to Nord Stream 2. So again, it's an obvious fact. You cannot ignore it, that they are publicly against the application of the EU rules to Nord Stream 2. Now back to Germany, again, with all due respect. But first, there was a court case and a decision of the European Court of Justice against the German regulator, that the German regulator failed to consider this solidarity principle of the treaty founding the European Union in case of Opal. So I'm not, again, making up some stories here. Again, that's a fact. So, and one could expect from a leader like Germany, basically, Germany is the EU leader, to show respect for this principle of the solidarity, not basically to show the opposite, because then again, countries will start asking, what's the purpose of the European Union if there is no solidarity? Also, unfortunately, there was a recent decision of the European Commission on the independence of the German regulator. The European Commission criticized Germany for the lack of this independence. So we hope that this time the situation will be different, so that the German regulator will follow this principle of the solidarity and will consider, again, a need for non-discriminatory third-party access to all the pipelines that connect Russia and the European Union, including the one that goes through Ukraine. And that it will leave enough space for the German regulator to be independent in their decision-making. And then the last comments about the green transition. So although we are historically an oil gas company, but now we're doing a lot for this green transition. So for example, again, because of the reforms that we initiated, market reforms, European reforms, consumption by households, it decreased like 40%, and it allowed us to decrease imports of gas 3 times. Then every year, Ukraine spends on green subsidies through so-called green tariff about $2 billion. It's from 1 to 2% of the Ukrainian GDP. That's a lot. That's basically the same type of money that we're getting for the transit of Russian gas. And this green transition is not about declarations. It's about investments. It's about making it happen. So if we don't have these transit revenues, then there is a question again, who will finance this green transition? You mentioned some $175 million. First of all, they haven't been dispensed yet. So they were kind of earmarked, and it's not clear when and how Ukraine can get them. But compare 175 million to 2 billions, basically, just 1 month of green subsidies. Again, it does not make a difference. It's not that we're not grateful, basically. Again, we need a reasonable engagement of the Western partners to make this green transition. The whole world needs a meaningful cooperation, because this climate change thing, it's a global fight that we're taking. So it's not about just Ukraine. But we're walking the walk. We're not just talking the talk. And with hydrogen, for example, we're saying that, look, the Ukrainian gas transmission system is also fit for hydrogen transit and hydrogen transmission, basically. Ukraine is the largest country in Europe territory-wise. So we have a lot of land, basically, for solar and wind farms. We have not one pipe, but for example, 5 pipes connecting basically Slovakia and Ukraine. So one of the pipes can be used for pure hydrogen transport. For other pipes, we can have a blend. So there are plenty of opportunities. But at the same time, again, we have to be honest in terms of what it takes to make this green transition happen. Yes. And currently, again, allowing Nord Stream 2 to become operating without this compliance with European law, allowing Russia to be above the law, allowing Russia to weaponize gas supplies is contrary to this agenda. Thank you.
I would like to give the floor to Professor Pluyer because there is no time for him, I think, and we'll come back. I would like to say also, for the sake of housekeeping, for those watching and listening us online, please use the chat to ask your questions. Thank you. Professor, you have the floor.
Thank you, Georgi, for giving me the floor one time more. First, just one brief remark to Yuri. I remember when we discussed in Oslo Nord Stream, I think three years ago, the question was, could we get a transit agreement with Russia and Ukraine? The German government tried very hard to get that transit agreement. We have that transit agreement in place now. We are very much in favor to prolong it, as you know. But I think without the German moderation here, it would have been very difficult to get that transit agreement. And you respected that. And I remember the Ukrainian government welcomed that very much because it secured transit fees, at least for the time being. But our understanding after this was, well, if we have that transit agreement, you will ease the opposition against Nord Stream. You didn't do so. You always ask for more. And that's what makes it very difficult. To the colleague from the Green Party, I respect, and please believe this, I respect your engagement for Ukraine very much. I always have believed that Ukraine's territorial sovereignty is very important for the peace in Europe. I was never in favor of bringing Ukraine in NATO. I thought it would be good to have this huge, important, wonderful country in the midst, and be it, and also as a part of in between Russia and the European Union. It brings enormous chances also for Ukraine to be in that role. But things went differently. I respect your engagement, but please consider again what you say as a member of the European Parliament, that you ask the United States, and with all the friendship that we have with the United States, it is not a European power. You ask the United States if your opinion is not completely represented by European institutions to intervene with sanctions. This is a mistrust against your own parliament, your own institutions. And we should, I believe absolutely that the German regulator will respect European law. Perhaps the interpretation is a bit different from yours, but that's always the case when we see law decisions. Sometimes we like them, sometimes we don't like them, but we should respect them, and not then, if we don't have it, if it's not our way, ask another power to come up with sanctions. This has to get away from the table, or it really puts an axe on a long-term, very good, very friendly, very trustful relationship with the United States. I don't want to have a partner in NATO who is threatening European companies. And it's not only Gazprom. It is two big German companies, it is an Italian, it is a French one, it is Shell. So it's a European consortium that is challenged by this. And I really would like that you reconsider that position and reject sanctions. You can stick to your Nord Stream position. You can stick, in my point of view, absolutely to fighting for Ukraine. It's right, it's interest, but not with anybody else. And the same goes for Yuri. If you want to come closer to Europe, you should not ask the US for more sanctions, but try to resolve this with the European institutions. Thank you. And I say again, sorry.
Okay. I would like to give the floor now to Viola von Kramon to reply, and then I'll open the floor for questions.
Exactly. And I mean, the sanction question is part of this joint agreement. And as Mr. Vitrenko has rightly said, in case of weaponizing gas, we can easily defend that, be it by the German side or by the US side. Well, I see that the Germans, of course, are much more reluctant, but anyway, it would be also their obligation. They are committed in the same way as the US colleagues are. I think a very important point is the German government has, I think 3 years ago, ratified this energy partnership. And yes, as Yuriy Vitrenko has said, the money is earmarked, but nothing has really happened in terms of concrete projects. I mean, all the people speak about hydrogen projects, but my concern is when I look to the German Ostausschuss, the German business community, the German business association, who's mainly in charge of that if they are blackmailed again by the Russians, will you invest in Ukraine for clean energy or will you invest in Russia? If you invest in a larger extent in Ukraine, your business aspirations in Russia might be damaged or might be harmed by this. So and plus, of course, let's say investment security, if Russia plans any kind of a military attack, maybe within the next month in Ukraine, and the situation is as it was in 2014, there will be a huge reluctance from any foreign direct investment to go forward with concrete agreement in terms of this energy partnership. So actually there's a double harm towards Ukraine. Of course, I know there are domestic issues and there are many things which the Ukrainian government should do first, and we are absolutely on the same page. When we ask the Ukrainian government to do the homework, to build up more resilience, to go forward with the legal provisions for the renewables and so on, I'm absolutely in line. But nevertheless, if we look at the current political, military, security situation on the borders of Ukraine, I'm very much afraid that even this situation might deter foreign direct investment to go into Ukraine and to invest a lot of money within the next month. And this could be also planned and part of the strategy of Russia.
Let's try to open up for Q&A, and I have received a question from my colleague David Biago from Axios. And by the way, Axios published that famous non-paper we have discussed, I mean, with the confidential marks on it. Right, so David asked the following question to both panelists. Is Naftogaz contributing information or arguments to other EU procedures? For instance, ACER's analysis, ACER's is the EU agency for cooperation of energy regulators, ACER's analysis of gas markets, or supporting Poland's call for an investigation into Gazprom market behavior. Maybe Yuriy Vitrenko is the best place to answer.
Yes, we do. Sometimes not directly, but indirectly. So, for example, ACER is this Association of Energy Regulators. So they talk to our regulator, and our regulator talks to us, and then we provide information and our analysis and insights about the abuses of dominance by Gazprom in the European market to our regulator, and they provide it to ACER. Also, we do work with PGNiG. It's like Polish Naftogaz. It's a similar company, a national company in Poland. We work together on a number of legal initiatives. So together we're fighting Nord Stream 2, and together we're fighting abuses by Gazprom. We're also in the past, and I don't know if I can reveal it or not, basically, but we are talking to DG Competition. It's EU antitrust authority about again the abuses we see in the market, and we are sharing our again our understanding and some concrete examples of such abuses. The same applies to the European Commission. There is DG Energy. It's another European institution in charge of the energy policy. We are talking to them on a regular basis, and we are sharing information with them. And even this time, I will be in Brussels. I will meet with European institutions, and we will provide again new information to them about these issues.
Thank you. I have a question from Edith Herzog. She's a former MEP from Hungary, from the S&D group. She refers to in the first part of her rather long question on reverse flows, and she's asking, she's stating that she's not involved in any way in the sector, and she has no stakes in it. But the question is, will Germany will be ready to redistribute the gas without Russian influence? Yeah.
I'm also not involved into the concrete contracting of Gazprom and the Nord Stream volumes, which are then on the market, and whether the increase of volume makes or gives more flexibility to German distributors. So that's a little bit, I don't know, above my knowledge, but I mean, theoretically, yes, with the increase of volume quantity, gas quantity, if we do not switch off the Ukraine transit pipeline, this should be easy. This should be the normal thing. If there is a bigger demand, it could be then satisfied with the additional gas coming from Nord Stream 2. But I have my doubts this will be part of the game. But of course, the gas will be there and can be sold to third countries, sure.
Let me be very explicit about that. So the only aim of Nord Stream 2 is to bypass Ukraine. Yes. So Ukraine basically made a European choice. We went on Maidan, basically. It was not that safe for us, but it was clear that Ukrainians want to be with Europe, not a part of the Russian world. And they decided to punish us for that. And to make it very into our face, they said, look, we will show to you that the West basically is rotten. And it's, again, we will show you some very concrete signs of the Western corruption, like Nord Stream 2. So what they did, basically, Germany doesn't need more gas from Nord Stream 2. And this gas, basically, that will go from Nord Stream 2 is not intended for Germany. If you look at all the arrangements, it should go from Germany, then, again, to other countries, like, again, Czechia, for example, and then to Slovakia or to Hungary. This new contract, for example, with Hungary, is very clear about that. So instead of taking gas, Russian gas, through Ukraine, Hungary will be taking Russian gas through Nord Stream 2 and through Turk Stream. And they, to make it even more painful, basically, for us, what they did, they de facto bribed European companies. This consortium of EU companies that the German professor mentioned is basically not about some equity stakes in the Nord Stream 2. It's not about operating this pipeline. It's basically they finance this pipeline, so they give money like loans, but with rates that look really above the market. So Gazprom can borrow money at 2-3% in the market if you look at their Eurobonds. But what we heard about interest rates on these loans is close to 10%. So 3 times the market rates. So they basically tell European companies, look, you will get money from us, but we need to show to the world that it's not a Russian project, it's a European project, because companies like Shell, companies like Uniper, companies like Wintershall, they are a member of this consortium. Again, they're not shareholders of this project, they're just lenders basically. And what we believe, they get by far above the market returns. Again, just to show it to the world. So that is why, again, one can expect that this gas will be distributed throughout Europe, but on Putin's terms. So that's this kind of weaponization that we're talking about, this price differentiation. Putin will come, for example, to Hungary and to say, look, okay, if you behave, you have this deal. If you don't behave, you don't have this deal. That's what he wants, basically. And then, by the way, back to your question about Rosneft, that Rosneft may have a share in gas supplies through Nord Stream 2. Even if it's the case, by the way, it's better than just Gazprom, but it's by far not enough. So a non-discriminatory third-party access means that Putin has access to Nord Stream 2 not with one hand, but with 2 hands. Basically, it's not this. It's not about this. You see, it's basically it should mean that not only Putin and his companies and again gas under his control can flow through Nord Stream 2, and again in real life it means that Central Asian exporters should be able to export again to the European Union. It means that European companies should be able to decide where they want to get Russian gas. So if they still want to buy Russian gas, okay, we cannot change it. But then at least let them decide if they want to take this gas on the Ukrainian-Russian border and then book capacities to transit gas through Ukraine. Let them decide. Then it will be a fair competition, a level playing field, whatever. And again, the German professor mentioned the transit deal that we signed. I signed this deal with Miller, by the way. But at the same time, I had expectations when I was signing this deal under the European rules that other companies will be able to transit gas through Ukraine because we did this unbundling in Ukraine. We implemented, sometimes in a painful way, some European reforms. Why? Because we thought that, again, we will have full access to the European market. We will have that Gazprom will no longer be in monopoly control over transit through Ukraine. And unfortunately, nothing changes. Gazprom is still basically the only, again, party that can transit gas through Russian territory to the European Union. And that's really contrary to our expectations when we were signing this deal, when we were promised that there will be real change after we apply the European rules.
One of the last op-eds I wrote on the issue was finishing with a question. If European countries want to show solidarity with Ukraine, they should insist on the point of entry of gas. But whether the countries will insist this or take a Gazprom discount, this is the question. I would like now to give the chance of people present here to ask questions. I keep receiving questions online, but now questions to those present. You have the floor, and then Dimitro. Please introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Svetlana Zalishuk. I'm former Ukrainian parliamentarian. At the moment, I'm working for Naftogaz. I have a comment and a question to Viola von Kramon. So my comment is, unfortunately, Mr. Pfluger has left, but he has said that it's not Naftogaz, oil and gas will be our future, but renewables. In my mind, it's not the type of the energy resource will define our future, but the rules that we apply towards the usage of these energy resources. Because in fact, gas is not more dangerous than hydrogen, right? It's the danger, real danger is coming from people that use this. And in fact, hydrogen can be inherited as a problem. If we don't take care about the rules we use, Mr. Putin can weaponize hydrogen or any other resources that are coming in the future and we will use later on. Now also, Mr. Pfluger has said that Nord Stream 2, that he has never heard that Nord Stream 2 is going to circumvent EU rules. Between Ukraine has never heard that Putin actually invaded Donbass or he annexed Crimea.
Can you please ask a question?
Yes, just 1 second. That he
We
poisoned
don't have too much
Navalny or so on. My question to MEP Viola. So we are here in Brussels and EU. What you as a European Parliament will be able and keen to do in order to de-weaponize the gas in Mr. Putin's hands? Thank you.
I think she's saying a lot already, and this is part of the reply, but I will give you the floor anyway, institutionally, what the European Parliament can do.
Well, of course, we hope that the Commission will take an honest and critical opinion on what the result might be. Hopefully, we as a parliament will have an even closer look at this result. We might postpone that. We might gain time. We might redefine what was then proposed by the new company, the unbundled company. So I think the influence is there, but as Yuriy has said before, I mean, the bribing, the discount which is offered to individual states to do this pass around, to go for bilateral contracts with Gazprom through the new pipeline is extremely temptive and it's extremely attractive. And how can we counterbalance that? I mean, of course, we can appeal solidarity and so on and long-term green deal perspective. But your first point, I think, was extremely valuable. And I'm absolutely concerned. I mean, it does not depend on the energy, let's say, material, what we use, but it depends on the relationship we, as you said, inherit. And that's why we should right now start really to think about how we can establish a different kind of energy partnership with Ukraine than with Russia. But that's what was my point before. I do not see really this commitment, even we have a contract written and signed 3 years ago. And that is my big concern, that there is not enough, let's say, enthusiasm, real money, pledges in that contract. And I hope with a new government, we can put more pressure and also more personal and financial power into this contract. But yes, your concerns are right. And I know, as I said, the majority in the European Parliament is absolutely against that. We will use all legal means. Even maybe what I've heard, some individual member states, some my MEPs might even sue, might go for court. So these are the opportunities. But in terms of instruments, concrete instruments, we can just intervene and ask the Commission for the best, let's say, legal opinion we can get.
Dimitros Kurko is next on my list.
Dmitros Kurko, National News Agency of Ukraine. Thank you so much for that opportunity. As a discussion comes quite tense, I believe we need to come back to basics. So that, Mr. Vitrenko, please excuse me for a very simple question. It's understandable why Ukraine apply for European support from your institution in the Euro Parliament. But could you please specify concretely why such countries like Germany, Italy, Belgium, which are not bordering Ukraine, which are not bordering Russia and less depends from Russian gas, should care about the Ukraine, its gas transportation system, and about its interests? And follow-up question, if we are speaking about the operational capability of Ukrainian gas transportation system, For how long time do you think it will be operational? If we will keep in mind the targets of the Green Deal and that Europe steadily will be refusing from the Russian gas. So that the same question is, could it be used for transportation of hydrogen, for example? And to Viola von Kramon, if I may, the professor told a lot of interesting things, and it's pity he left us now. But maybe you will answer the question. Do you believe that, as a representative of the Green Party, that allowing Gazprom to transport gas through Nord Stream 2 could like be a impetus for Russia to follow the Green Deal targets? I mean, do you believe that really it's possible that Nord Stream 2 will be in the future used for transporting hydrogen like we have had from professor? And by the way, there was some ideas announced by Mr. Timmermans in that regard. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dimitro. I will just like to sneak a question also for Viola von Kramon. It's in her capacity of green German politician. Is she more optimistic now with the new coalition government regarding what you would like to achieve with Nord Stream 2? But Mr. Vitrenko has the floor first.
The first question about why some European countries should care about the interests of Ukraine. So first of all, we do have this association agreement between the EU and Ukraine. And in this association agreement, both sides clearly show that both EU cares about Ukraine and Ukraine cares about the EU, because we have made this European choice. And we believe that, again, together we're stronger, both the EU and Ukraine. And again, I haven't mentioned it this time, but I do mention it quite often, that unfortunately, if there are no flows of gas through Ukraine, and that's a reality after Nord Stream 2 is operating, there will be most likely no transit through Ukraine whatsoever, no physical flows. It will increase the chance of a full-scale war between Russia and Ukraine. Of course, it's not in Ukraine's interest, but it's not also in the interest of the EU to have a full-scale war just next to the EU, especially again between Ukraine and Russia. But also, it's not just about the Ukraine's interests. So now we see crazy record high prices in the EU market, and EU citizens suffer from such unjustified increase in the gas price. And these record high gas prices are, again, to some extent, there's some global factors like global inflation, again, some rise in demand, whatever, but also to a large extent, it's a direct effect of the Russian, again, policy, weaponizing gas as gas supplies, again, decreasing gas supplies to the European market. And also, it's very important to recognize that the European Union is based on these fundamental principles of the rule of law and solidarity. If Russia attacks these fundamentals, if it's able basically to prove, to show that this rule of law no longer prevails, that there is no real solidarity among the EU member states, they ruin the EU. And that's what they want to do, divide and conquer again. They haven't invented this principle, that's what Putin follows, basically. The second question about the capabilities of and the future of the Ukrainian gas transmission system. Yes, again, Ukrainian gas transmission system can and should be used for hydrogen transmission. We hope it will be green hydrogen first and foremost. As I have mentioned, again, we do have a sizable renewable sector in Ukraine. And Ukraine is investing a lot. Again, every year 2% GDP goes into green subsidies, so from 1 to 2%. Also, again, even Naftogaz, although we are historically an oil gas company, we are investing in renewables. We have our solar farms. We are now working on some projects to produce green hydrogen and to export it to the European market, currently in the form of green ammonia. But we're also working on prospects to transport it through the gas transmission system of Ukraine. That's why it has some future. But of course, without transit of gas through the Ukrainian territory, be it Russian gas, be it Central Asian gas, it will be very technically challenging to maintain such a huge system as we have in Ukraine.
Mr. Vitrenko, I would like to ask you, I know that you have a meeting very soon. How many minutes do we have? Because we are reaching the, we are almost at 1:30. Okay, so we have like 5 minutes.
It's rule demonstrate.
Okay, so we'll take 5 more minutes, but Viola von Kramon has the floor first.
Quickly, well, I think our policy now in the new government, and that's what I've read in the coalition treaty, but what was mainstream green policy is we should decrease our energy dependence as such. Yeah, and of course, decarbonization of heavy industry will need hydrogen, but nevertheless, we would like to electrify before. So energy efficiency is first, then electrifying, and then using hydrogen. So even with the, let's say, transformation, I think in the end, we would be less dependent from Russian gas. And maybe then the peaks could be satisfied by deliveries from, I don't know, Ukraine or other partners who also have, let's say, the similar set of rule of laws and values and so on. So this would be at least what we are striking for. Am I more optimistic with the new government? Sure, I am. I know that we have a good minister, hopefully, for economy. I trust him fully. The same is true for our Minister for Foreign Affairs. She is great. She knows the situation. She was always against this project. And I guess together they will use all the opportunities they have in their hands politically and legally to make the best out of this. This is all what I can say, but I think it is a different situation from what we had before. And hopefully we can also convince some of the more, let's say, Gerhard Schröder social democrats that Nord Stream 2 is not a good project for German consumers and especially for Ukraine. So this, let me put at the end.
I think we will have just, each one will have the chance to speak once more, and please make your final remarks. I would like to start with a question I have received from the audience by Mikhailo Gonchar, who is making reference to the association agreement, the EU-Ukraine Association Agreement, mentioning Article 274. I'm not going to read it, it's long, but basically it says there is language that the parties shall endeavor to facilitate the use of gas transmission infrastructure and gas storage facilities, shall consult, coordinate, and so on. So basically the question is, why don't we use the association agreement? Is this language too general or what? And please make your final comments because we will need to close.
Okay, that's my final comment because I really need to run. But we do trust the European institutions, and we do trust the European Union and the European Commission that even with such a broad declaration in our association agreement, we believe that it really reflects the true intentions of the European Union to follow, again, such basic principles as the rule of law and solidarity also towards Ukraine. So that is why, although it's not very specific, we are hopeful that, again, principles will prevail over some short-term gains of some bad actors or just, again, greedy actors everywhere. Thank you.
Thank you. Final words from Viola von Kramon.
Well, yes, I know that Michael Gonchar is a better expert in that field where he has raised the question than myself. So yes, maybe we should also put this on the agenda of the next parliamentary association agreement committee. So I take this note, no question. And otherwise, I hope we will have a good start with a new government in relation with Ukraine. I hope we will not have a first crisis, which is not rooted in Ukraine, I know, but it is rooted more in a more eastern direction. But I cross my finger that we will make everything possible, and hopefully we will sit here in 1 or 2 years where we really debate about the European Green Deal, where we really see an implementation of green projects, of wind farms, diversified with access to foreign direct investments secured by I don't know whom, but this would be something I would like to work on, and more than happy to cooperate with each and everyone in Ukraine.
Thank you. Final words from me too. I must say that I'm proud that Euractiv Bulgaria organized such a lively debate. It's not every day that we have such interesting and controversial discussions indeed. And we will continue. I mean, my ambition is to have a series of conferences, and I would also like one of the next events to discuss Turkstream, which is the mirror of Nord Stream, which crosses across the Black Sea, and unfortunately, Bulgaria plays a role there. But that will be the subject of another conference. So you will be welcome to join that one as well. Thank you very much for your interest. Thank you very much for your questions. Sorry if everything was not answered, but as I said, we will have more such events. Thank you and goodbye.
All the best.